another episode of Journey to Success, the podcast of the Black Business Alliance. I'm thrilled again today to be with Mr. James C. Nicholas, who I am privileged to work with just about every day for the past 5 years, Jim, if you can believe it.
Right now, yes it is.
It's been 5 years since we've been working together. And I think one of the things that I love the most about working with you is, first of all, your commitment to working with Black-owned businesses, but it's also your willingness to train and help others learn and understand how to do what you've been doing for, 40, 50?
Going on 50 years.
50 years in this business. So you're a real gift to us in this industry, and I'm looking forward to kind of bringing out now some more of this discussion and talking about expansion, globalization. So today we're going to think about global mindset, local roots, expanding across borders with purpose. So globalization, partnerships, and preparing for international growth. So this I know is your bag, Jim.
Well, that's a mouthful.
That is a mouthful. This is a mouthful, but I know you can manage it. So let's just start to think about now the business who is considering being ready for international expansion.
That's a good,
right? Where are they? What should they be looking for? What are their markers? If their next step, if they're sitting there and saying, I think I can do business in China, or I should do business in Africa, or wherever is the expansion, what are they looking for?
The first thing is how stable and how prosperous is your business today? Do you have a business that you have a good market share, that's growing? You have control of your business environment? Then you're in a position from a strategic standpoint to begin to say, how do I expand my global horizons? First of all, you should probably begin to work with countries that are close to you. You want to go into countries where there is a market need, where your product would prosper. But in the event that you have a mechanical problem or some sort of supply problem, if they're close, it's easy for you to bring your product back, take care of it, if you will, or come to a foreign trade zone where you can destroy it and you don't have to worry about paying the taxes. Or you can be in a position where if you have to send an engineer or someone over, depending on the sophistication of your product, then you have to send them over. You can reduce your costs by having them work in a market that's close to you. Many times you don't have to necessarily be an English-speaking market. You can work in Mexico, you can work in South and Central America. You can work in Canada, where you can speak French or English, etc. So you can work in markets close to you first that the time frame, remember the time horizon is important. So if something happens, you want to be able to address it more quickly.
All right, so if I'm at that point where I'm saying, okay, I'm thinking I'm ready for a globalization or international expansion, you've kind of given me some things to think about. But what are the early steps that I need to take before even entering into that global market?
First of all, understanding the markets that you want to go into. You need to do the market research. You need to do the work. You have to recognize that you have to understand, most of all, we have not talked much about the culture. Culture kills, poor understanding of culture kills more deals than anything. So the faux pas that one makes, the cultural faux pas, really have gotten into the way of even large corporations losing big deals.
Wow.
Okay, so you have to understand the culture. You have to recognize that what you say may mean something to you, but may mean something entirely different to someone else from a cultural standpoint. You have to understand that many times, even though we have Google, etc., Google is only as good as the information that's being fed to it. So if you're looking at market research, your market research may not be up to date to the extent that you're accustomed to it. So then you have to do a lot of extrapolations on the numbers, etc., so that at least you can feel comfortable with the size of the markets. Many of these countries are very, very large, and they have a lot of sub-regions. Each one of those sub-regions have different market opportunities. So you just can't say, I'm going to go to China because it got 3 billion people. Okay. But of that amount, usually the most economic viable group that you're going to be addressed are those are right along the coast.
Wow.
So it's not 3 billion people anymore.
Right. So I hear you saying understand your market and do your market research. And it's obviously more than just understanding the numbers, like what is the target market, how many people am I selling to, or what's my opportunity there. And then that cultural piece is so critical. What else should be a real consideration factor if we're looking at doing that market research? And I do know, because I think that you were mentioning something about Google, but AI in particular, that if you're doing your research and you're using AI, yes, you can pull down information very quickly, but it may not be up to date. What other considerations should we take into place before making that step?
You have to understand, how are you going to distribute your product? Do you have a distribution network? You also may have to recognize that you may have some advantages, two-way supply advantages, if you are able to send finished goods to a market and bring back unfinished goods that you can make into another product, again saving you money. But understanding how do you reach your customer, it's not like you're going to go out the door, go down the street and knock on doors. You can't do that in a lot of these different countries. So you have to have people who are trained, knowledgeable about it, and work in that particular country. If you're working in, if you will, in South Korea, I would suggest that your distributor should be from South Korea. They should not be someone that you're bringing in from the United States and say they have a distribution network.
That's good advice. Can you share an experience where a cultural misunderstanding really became a business challenge or a breakthrough? And I know you've had a few of those, but help us understand, because you pushed into that piece about culture, and I want folks to understand that it's not just, we often talk about, it's not just business mechanics. This cultural piece is important.
Yeah, culture is can be taken two ways. Number one, I think I may have mentioned about in Taiwan at a dinner from a cultural piece, where usually you sit around a round table and you're able to enjoy your meal, and then they usually will bring out a large fish and the head and the tail, and usually the people of value get the head, and the other person gets the tail. Those are still considered valuable pieces. And at one point, I was, being the guest, I was offered the head, and I'm looking at this eye, and I'm saying, fortunately, my palate is good, so I'm able to consume. But I was very generous, and I said, you know, I am so pleased and honored that you wanted me to get the head. But let me return my generosity, because I'm going to offer it back to you. And that went over very, very, very nicely. Another example of
Well, don't go so fast on that one, because I don't want people to lose what's come across there. And I think, and I don't want to say this, I'm going to be careful about the way I say it. Sometimes, especially folks, American, maybe not from this country, there's a level of privilege, no matter who we are, that we expect everything to be the way we expect it to be. And so when you're in another culture, there is sometimes, I felt it like even in Europe, that people look down their nose almost when they're in another location. Right? And so you could have had an experience where you saw the fish head, okay, not the thing that is your most favorite part of the fish, and you're looking at that big eye, and you could have just turned your nose up. And that would have been a completely different interaction.
And that's where the phrase, the ugly American, comes into place. Where I've seen Americans throw coats, if you will, at a coat rack rather than hanging them up properly, because they, as you said, this whole privilege piece comes into play. So yes, what you say is very, very important, and each country is different. For instance, just to say on the hospitality part of it, when you go to China, Korea, Japan, the first thing they do when you arrive that night is they want to take you out to drink, to enjoy. But the first thing they want to know is about your family. family is very important to them. You talk about the self-evaluation. Well, we're starting that. They're starting that whole self-evaluation process. You're at jumps where you will see chairman of the boards will go up and sing and drink with the rest of the leaders, if you will, where you would never see them act in that way outside of that environment. So the first thing that they want to do is to be able to see how you handle working in, and you passing the glasses of wine, whiskey around, etc., and the gifts that you give, which is very important to give when you go to Japan. So I think from that standpoint, it's small things that are important.
Yes.
I even may have mentioned earlier about the fact that when I was in Japan, I tried to sign my name in in Japanese, and my friend said, "Jim-san, you write just like my little girl." I had a little difficulty in getting my characters correct, but the fact that you tried was important, and that's all I was trying to do, is to explain to them that, hey, we're on the same page here.
No, I appreciate that. So how can entrepreneurs find international partners or collaborators?
Depending on the size and scale of the business. The larger the business, the easier it is to find partners. If you are a small person, many times your partners abroad will look down at you because they're used to the larger corporations coming through. So you have to have a different approach. You have to have someone over in that particular area who want to kind of sponsor you coming over, so that all of a sudden they become your relationship partner and they can help to break the seal. If you have a rather significant company, and I'm talking about now billions of dollars, we're not talking about the types of companies that we would work with, then those are the kinds of companies that I had worked with coming up, the big ones, and rather than the small ones.
Okay. So what kind of legal or financial considerations should not be overlooked if you're thinking about this next stage?
Okay. First of all, you want to make sure that you protect your property, your intellectual property. So you want to make sure that all of your intellectual property is secure. A lot of small businesses did not want to go abroad, particularly into China, Japan, because they were afraid that someone would go around their patents, if you will, and take all of their proprietary knowledge.
Okay.
So they were afraid to even try to get into those markets because of the fact that they say once it's over there, it will be reverse engineered, and then all of a sudden they'll be coming back into your market with your product.
Wow.
So that's one of the things that you should do. You should also make certain that there is a document that outlines exactly what are the responsibilities of each one of the groups, each one of the parties. You want to make sure that you're on solid ground, because communications is important, and it could be easily misunderstood. So you want to make sure that you spell out A, B, C, D, what are the responsibilities of each of the parties, and have a way in which you can measure how well it has happened.
I think that's good. I would imagine currency is an issue when you're thinking globalization.
Well, right now it's kind of volatile.
Okay.
Currency's up and down in light of what's going on. But yes, understanding your ability to convert dollars and be able to even to sell in other markets in other currencies. So we're so used to everything being dollar denominated.
Yep.
You have to recognize that if you go down to the EU, you're not necessarily going to sell in dollars. That you have to understand the euro. You go to China, you have to understand you have to understand the different types of Chinese currency, because you have a marketable RMB, which is one, and then there's another kind which is more of a local currency, and then the same thing in Korea. And I haven't not been to Korea in a while, but at the time when I was going there, everything was not credit cards. Everything was dollars denominated. When I say dollar, if you were in Korea, it was you use the South Korean currency.
Wow.
or in China, not so much in Japan, because Japan you would use currency. China was a lot of, particularly where you would use the local currency.
Wow. Okay. Wow. So what industries do you think offer maybe some strong potential or global opportunity for Black-owned businesses now?
Well, here's the thing that's kind of interesting. We looked at the deficit, the trade deficit. In trade, services is not a negative. So if you have a service opportunity, something that's unique, working with a partner, you may be able to make some inroads into each other. So most people don't think about going abroad. They only think from a product standpoint. They don't think about that. The service industry is very big.
Wow. So give me an example of like what type of a business that could be, or whatever you think.
Well, number one, a lot of the African companies, for instance, countries, they don't like to be involved with what they call soft goods, i.e. they want things that are hard. So they don't put the same value in your teaching or you're providing consultant services as in another country.
Okay.
Like if you were in Japan, you had something neat, Korea, Japan, Taiwan, all of those countries, they will certainly want to grasp, because they send their kids to all of these American, European, they can bring back the latest of what? Technology, so they understand better the service, the consultant opportunity.
Okay.
Working with small companies, again, it's kind of difficult because it's a lot of things that you have to overcome. Now you have another issue, which is the duty issue. We think about duties only coming into the United States. Remember, there are duties now when we're going back into the other countries that we now have to, and it's changing all the time. It's also important to understand, if you work with your clients, if you will, you're going to say, how can I help you if you help me? So you use a QuickBooks quote, and if it's all how you identify the type of product coming in, which will determine the type of duty that you have to pay, both ways. So that's important to have a person who has an understanding of that whole international supply chain, as evidenced by one of our clients who brought some things from abroad and all the issues that she had to face as a result of bringing product into the United States. And this was considered relatively small order, but that is something that comes again and again. So it's a lack of understanding of how the system works. That presents a problem.
So doing your homework. And
doing your homework.
Really being clear about how the system works.
And speaking with people who have done it. So working with freight forwarders and people of that nature, which is their business.
Wow.
They can help you a great deal.
Okay, that's good to know. I'm wondering we've often talked about smaller businesses, and I think for the ones that we work with at BBA, for the most part, they are smaller businesses. What opportunities do you think there are for businesses to maybe come together, collaborate, join together to be able to take advantage of any international opportunities? Are there opportunities like that?
That's a wonderful question. I can look at that question two ways, both domestically as well as internationally. Okay. The fact is that the sum of the parts is greater than the whole. So you can have value in numbers. So again, we have to touch on things we touched before, and that's trust. You have to have partners with whom you can work, who are on the same page as you are, who have the same goals and objectives, and being able to utilize the different skills that each group brings so that you have a larger entity. The larger the entity, the better is the opportunity, both domestically and internationally, to crack into the market.
So that's an interesting take, and that trust factor is key. There's also, this is a mindset thing as well, right? But it's also being willing to put down egos. It's being willing to say, okay, you have this skill set, I have that skill set, how do we merge that together? That's a mindset that I think sometimes is challenging. How do we help people to even start to think that way?
Well, Number one, you go back to what is your goal? What is the goal of your individually and collectively? And what you can say, what am I willing to give up in order to get? So from that standpoint, and I love the way we use the word mindset, because it is really something that more and more becomes part of the lexicon, if you will, of the business manager, the business leader.
Right.
And that is to say, I know that you're very strong in this area. You're strong operationally. Let's see if we can pull ourselves together. We have a financial genius over there who is able to understand and help us reduce our costs and to have to expand our. And we have a person here who now has an understanding of how to market domestically, but using some of those same skills, we can help him internationally.
Absolutely.
But remember, in the global marketplace, it's the relationships that's most important. So you have to start off. You're not going to send out 100 letters to people in different parts of the world say, buy my product. You have to have someone who's going to be able to make sure that that product offering gets to the right person.
Oh, that's good. So why is it important then for Black entrepreneurs to think globally in today's economy?
Because the world has gotten smaller. The world has shrunk. Something can happen 13 hours away from it, and we can know what's happening immediately. So that means also that the markets are changing rapidly at the same rate. So you have to be aware, and you can't just be myopic. You have to be able to broaden your horizons, to look beyond your local borders and look globally, because number one, you're talking about a larger number of markets. But the other thing you want to remember, the United States is the largest market, and many of those same markets that you're trying to penetrate, they're trying to penetrate here. So you should be aware of what the competition is that you'll be facing as you begin to. So don't reduce what you're doing here in the States as you try to expand abroad.
Wow. A couple of things you've said today that really resonate with me, and that one is really thinking through the power of the collective. And I think if folks are starting to think, we're scaled, we're growing, and potentially there may be something global that we could think about, how we look at working together as a collective, both domestically and internationally. I think you're absolutely right, Jim. That collective power, I am curious, I'm going to ask you again, how do we get people to start thinking this way?
Again, we started with mindset. We have to be able to have people understand that they cannot do it alone. No one can do it alone. Those who have tried to do it alone have gone up the hill and fallen down on the other side. So we have to be able to bolster ourselves in the underpinning, and we're talking about foundation building always. Relationship is foundation. You're building a foundation of relationships over and over and over again. So from that standpoint, these relationships will get you in the door. Poor relationships will get you kicked out of the door.
Yeah.
So not only do you have to generate relationships, but be true to the relationship. And basically, do not try to undermine your the person who's developing the relationship from you. A lot of companies try to get too cute. They find someone to get in the door and say, oh, I can do that myself, without realizing they cannot. The door, all of a sudden, the door is shut on them.
So that integrity is key.
Integrity is very important, which we started our conversation with. We're talking about integrity, and so we're talking about personal as well as business integrity. And they're not separate.
No, they're not.
They're intertwined. If you're in business, you have to generate integrity on both sides. You have to make a person feel really comfortable to you. A classic example is that when my father died when I was in Korea, everyone, and it was sudden, all of my clients came together to make sure that I was taken care of so I could get away.
Wow.
So I could make that long trip back. But that was the relationship.
Yes.
They could have just said, oh, I understand. No, it was not just I understand. It was more than just condolence.
Yeah, that's perfect. perfect example. So I would like to wrap up this segment by really helping folks to understand. I mean, you've got 50 plus years of international business experience and business experience. Give us just a nugget of your background, why it's important, and how it's been able to help you translate those skills to help black entrepreneurs.
Okay, I'm very brief. Born and raised in Baltimore, Maryland. I graduated from Morgan State College University in 1970. Graduated from Harvard Business School in 1972. I got my real training and background in working in the market. My degrees did not get anything for me, except my Harvard degree gave me the opportunity to facilitate relationships because Harvard is known worldwide. So that opened doors for me, but if I did not perform, then that door shut very quickly. So the fact that I was able to do so many things and still have people with whom I had worked over time still talk to me and want to talk to me helps me recognize that we did make some things that matter. Whether they were in Asia, things that I had done in Africa, particularly in Nigeria, these are things that still stand out. Relationships that were developed even in Nigeria, working with the different heads of state, as well as working within the different commissioners, the different managerial perspectives. And then bringing that knowledge of saying, we have a culture here in the United States. How do we utilize and help our companies broaden themselves to think about the cultural aspects? So I try to bring the culture, try to bring those skills. And it is a skill, it's a skill of understanding, a skill of how do you listen? How do you hear what is really being said? Are you giving your client who may write something to you, a text or email, that may not be perfect English, but you understand the thrust of what's being said, and rather than get back to him and castigating him about because if he asks you to write something in Japanese or Chinese, or even in Spanish, French, can you do it as well as someone? No.
So not being so judgmental. What has been the biggest joy? Because you've made an impact for, I mean, we don't have a number, but a lot of black-owned businesses around the state. What brings you the most joy about doing this type of work?
The most joy begins when they says, aha, the light bulb went off. They knew the light bulb was there, it was dim, but they didn't know how to brighten it, and just working together. Sometimes just a small touch, all of a sudden just opens the door. Or you may be working with someone who's trying to work through a combination of personal issues and problems, and the ability to be able to understanding of what that means. And then they say, oh, Jim, yes, I understand. And we've been fighting unnecessarily, and here's how we can make that. Because together you can go farther than apart. And so that was my biggest skill, is seeing the success that you were able to recognize different failures, but recognizing that people who have expressed an interest in wanting to get ahead and who dutifully responds to your coaching, recognizing that there may be differences of opinion, that's fine, but saying, how about thinking about this, and they come back to you later and say, you know, I know we fought about this, but you know, I kind of like what you said. And then we move on to the next level. These are plateaus. Right. And so I try not, I look at some of the failures and back off and say, what are the things that could have been done differently in order to have turned that around? Sometimes there is nothing. Right. Then sometimes there are things that could have been done a little bit differently that would have made it better.
I think your ability to listen, as you've just stated earlier, is also a key aspect of that. So you get not just what are the mechanics that are going wrong or right in the business, but also being able to understand what a person's mindset is and what they also may be physically going through or in relationships that also impact the business. So I think that that's key. So I'd like to say thank you for your time today, Mr. James Nicholas. our professor, trailblazer, business coach extraordinaire. Thank you for this time and helping us to understand how we can make an impact in global markets today.
Thank you.
And thank you for listening in and joining us today.
Okay.